This is Wisdom Moments with T.A. Smith Sr., pastor at Bethesda Missionary Baptist Church, Fort Wayne, Indiana. Good morning. Thank you for joining me for this edition of Wisdom Moments. I certainly pray that as you begin this Saturday, that you will enjoy a weekend of fun, a weekend of relaxation with your family and friends as you engage in various activities of recreation and leisure. But as we begin this Saturday, there is a seed I want to deposit in your spirit, if I may. It is based on a word that is recorded in the writings of 1 Kings, the 17th chapter, and I'll begin reading at verse 2 and several of the following verses thereafter. Then the word of the Lord came to him, that is to Elijah, saying, "Get away from here and turn eastward and hide by the brook Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. And it will be that you shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens to feed you there." So he went and did according to the word of the Lord, for he went and stayed by the brook Cherith, which flows into the Jordan. The ravens brought him bread and meat in the morning, and bread and meat in the evening, and he drank from the brook. There is a word in this scenario that is very key and significant. It's a 5-letter word, the word there, T-H-E-R-E, and it's in the 4th verse. God says, "And it will be that you shall drink from the brook, and I have commanded the ravens," watch this, "to feed you there." God has a place of choosing, a place of assignment for each of us who are his children. It is not a place of our choosing. It is a place of God's choosing. It is what he designs for us, the station, the place, the location that he designs for us for our provision and for our preservation. It is also often a place where he designs or that he designs for us and chooses for us, that is a place for us to serve and to be a blessing unto others. Most of us have been paying attention to the news reports of the shooting that occurred in Aurora, Illinois on yesterday. 5 lives taken, 6 counting the perpetrator who was upset and angry, clearly because they lost their job, and in their anger and frustration got revenge on others who they held responsible, or took it out on others who were not necessarily responsible for them losing their job. It's a reminder to us, a grim reminder to us of how unsafe we are in this world. We are unsafe in schools. We are unsafe in places of employment. We are unsafe even in houses of the Lord, sanctuaries where we go to worship the Lord, or even in synagogues. Our children are unsafe in schools. We no longer seemingly have any safe zones in this society. But there is a place that remains to be a safe place for us. Where is that place? That place is in the will of God. The safest place to be is to be in the will of God. And the prophet Elijah was living in a very dark and dismal, godless time. And daring to take a stand for God, he put his own life in peril. But God, after Elijah gave King Ahab the word of that there would be no rain, that a drought would overtake the land, God gave his prophet instructions to go and hide by the brook Cherith, and promised him, there I will command ravens to feed you. He was in God's will. And even though circumstances around him were adverse and difficult, because he was in God's will, God took care of him and preserved him and provided for him and protected him from the enemy. The safest place to be is to be in the will of God. And whenever we venture away from that designated place God has for us, we always open ourselves up to an abundance of adversity and afflictions and problems. To be sure, we experience difficult times when we're in the will of God, but outside of the will of God, things are much more difficult always, and we lose his blessing and his promise. I would rather be in a tight spot, a tough place, and to have the presence of God and his blessings than to be in an open space and not have God's blessing and God's presence. It's really not, for a child of God, a tough choice to make. I want to encourage you with this word because we are often challenged in our places of assignment. The place that God has chosen for us is not always an ideal place. It does not always match our dream or our aspiration. It doesn't always satisfy our desires. Often we are longing for something more than where we are and what we're experiencing. But if it be that God has designated and chosen the place for us where we are, the wisest thing for us to do is to stay in that place, regardless of how difficult it seems, regardless to how unenjoyable it may be. It's the best place for us to be. I think about 21 years ago and some months now, when I first left home, Fort Wayne, the community I grew up in, to go pastor the First Baptist Church in Fostoria, Ohio. It was my first time moving away from home. And one of the dear saints at the church I was serving at that time as assistant pastor, gave me a plaque that I kept on the shelf, the bookshelf in my study there. And I often referred to it, particularly in difficult times. But that plaque said, the will of God will never lead you to a place where the grace of God cannot keep you. Those words were so powerful, and they have blessed me on so many occasions and in so many trying times across the years. The will of God will never lead you to a place where the grace of God cannot keep you. I am a living testimony of the truth that's embedded and held in that statement. God will keep you if you stay in the place that he has appointed and designated, regardless to how convenient or how likable it may be. I want you to recognize that God has a designated place for you, and where you are currently may be that designated place. It's the place of God's choosing. Who can make a better choice for us than the choice that God makes for us? His choice is always best. Hence, we have to abstain from leaning to our own understanding and trust in the Lord with all of our hearts, because truly He knows just what's best. And whenever we of our own volition would depart from that place that God has chosen for us, the place where He has designated for us, we forfeit His preservation, we forfeit His provisions, we forfeit His protection. I don't care how difficult and rough that place is. I don't care how much peril and danger is in that place. If God has established you and put you there, it is best to stay there and trust Him to take care of you even in that place. I think of Paul's, the apostle's, advice and counsel to his son in the faith, Timothy, who was in an assignment at Ephesus. And Ephesus was a difficult place of ministry. There was much resistance to God and His work in Ephesus. In fact, even Paul himself said on an account, I have fought with beasts in Ephesus. That's how treacherous of a place Ephesus was. And Paul had sent Timothy to that very place to conduct and carry on ministry, the work of the Lord. And it seems that Timothy was frustrated with the assignment there. He was panicking, it seems, from what was taking place or the hardness of the assignment, and had a desire to resign from it, to walk away from it. And Paul, knowing where he was, the nature of the place where he was, the environment, and how the people were, says to Timothy, stay at Ephesus. Stay at Ephesus. Sometimes the place where we desire not to be is where the Lord needs us most. And we have to determine and resolve to trust God's wisdom and to trust His love and to trust His purposes above our own. Where is your there? And perhaps you're wrestling with being there. Maybe it's a marriage that seems to have lost its love. Maybe it's a job that doesn't appeal to you to the same degree it once did. Maybe I'm talking to some teenager who is frustrated because of the rules and regulations that you have to live with in your parents' home, and you're thinking about moving out or moving in with a friend who's on their own. Maybe it's someone who's in a church where things are just not the way you thought they would be or that you think they should be. It's a difficult time in the life of that congregation, that church. There's a time of testing and trial. Maybe it's a pastor even who's just fed up with the people you've been appointed to minister to and to give spiritual oversight to. And you're thinking about turning in your resignation and walking away from that place. I don't know where your there is and the difficulty you are experiencing in your there, but I want to encourage you, as Paul said to Timothy, stay there. Stay there. Running away is not necessarily the answer. Quitting is not necessarily the answer. A divorce is not necessarily the answer. It may be that God is using that place in a way that you cannot see now to further His good in your life as well as in the lives of others. Stay there. Stay in your Ephesus. Trust God. Now, if God tells you to move, that's different. But if God has not given you a clear word to go to the next place, stay there, and He'll take care of you there. Now, notice this. There came a day when the brook at Kerith dried up, And the same God who sent Elijah to the brook of Cherith to preserve, protect, and provide for him there is the same God who noticed that the brook had dried up. And the same God came to him in the 8th verse of 1 Kings 17. It says, then the word of the Lord came to him, saying, arise, go to Zarephath, which belongs to Sidon, and dwell there. See, I have commanded a widow there to provide for you. When God orders your move, he doesn't leave you in limbo. He takes you to the next place, the next there, the next place of his choosing. And he's already put things in place for your provision and for your protection. God does not work arbitrarily. We walk by faith. We trust him. He unfolds the plan step by step. But we have to trust him and obey and move when he says move, not on our own volition. Don't step outside of God's will. Stay in his will by abiding in the place where he has called you to be. That's his chosen place for you. And you cannot prosper any place else as you can in God's chosen place for you. I don't know about you, but I just want to be in the place of his choosing for my life. And I pray that you are in the place of God's choosing for you, and that even with the roughness and even with the ordeals you may encounter in that place, that you will stay there, that you will have the tenacity and the courage, the trust to stay there until God speaks further. Have a blessed weekend and stay in your there.
Even if you can't trace him, trust his heart.